Hello and welcome to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine, and today we are talking about how to date after losing a spouse. And if you've lost a spouse right at the beginning, you might be thinking, I don't even know how that's possible. And that's exactly how my interviewee today, Greg Godsey, how he felt. He certainly couldn't see that 3 years after losing his wife that he would be jumping back into the dating pool and would all of these years later find another love in his life and be getting married. I'm releasing this video on Easter Sunday because I see some really interesting parallels. If you believe in the story of Easter, if you believe in the story of the resurrection, there was a very dark period of time leading up to the crucifixion of Christ. The story of Greg and his journey through grief after losing his wife is one of despair, of sadness, of not knowing how he was going to make it through the day. But there is such a story of triumph that comes out of the darkness that he experienced. And there is a hope and an inspiration. It's why I call this channel Grief Inspired, because I believe in my heart of heart that your grief can inspire you. And I think Greg does a fantastic job in this video of sharing exactly what that message is. He's going to share the experience of going out on his first date. He's going to share with you some of the things that were difficult and how he changed his mindset to get to a place where he could date again and not feel like he was betraying his wife. And I know that's a concern that so many of you who have lost spouses have. Now, if you haven't lost a spouse and you've lost someone else close to you, do not leave, because this video will have a lot of really useful nuggets that you can use to help you on your own grief journey. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I want to interact with you, and I want to give you the hope that you need to move through your grief and get back to living just the way that Greg does in this story. So let's dive right in, and I want to be able to introduce you to Greg Godsey. Welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty, and I am very excited to bring Greg Godsey back to us, to our YouTube channel. So Greg, you did a recording with us. I looked back, it was actually 2 years ago. So I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm so excited to have you back. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be back. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and the recording that we did last time was called How to Move Forward After Loss. So, and it was a very popular recording. We have over 18,000 views on it already, and it continues to be one of my best viewed videos, which is great. And so what that tells me is that people want to hear about how to date after loss. What does that look like, and how do you approach that? And I think we talked a little bit about it 2 years ago, but that's why I wanted to bring you back. So I want to lead with the really good news that I want you to share with everybody here.
I'm getting married, and I'm so excited. I'm moving here to Mexico. I'm in the process of moving here to Mexico, but so the court has to marry you before you do a church wedding.
Sure.
Or another wedding. So that's why the 23rd is the official wedding, but the 6th will be on the beach in Rosarito at sunset.
That's so
it's going to be beautiful.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's start by how we got together. I think you found me on YouTube is when we started talking, right?
Yeah. I was told that I needed to get help, and which I've been told that my whole life. but after losing Renee, Um, I was seeking for a way to find out how do I move forward, and I happened across your page, and I believe I wrote something, responded to something, and then you contacted me, and we've been friends ever since, really. So, and it has allowed me to talk to other people and to give them advice, or to tell them, not really advice, but to tell them how I did something. But I'm always make sure to tell them also that just because it works for me doesn't mean it'll work for you. But this is what I did. You could try it.
Yes, yes.
So
And I want to let everybody know while we're talking here that you've done a great job sort of giving a lot of others in support in the Facebook group. So that's the Grief
good. Thank you.
Inspired Facebook group. So if people want to talk to you and even ask you more questions when we're done with this interview, that's the place to go.
Yeah, and I'm not even opposed to. I've had people actually call me, and we talk on the phone. And in fact, I've got one of your uh, people. I don't know if I should say their name, but well, I'll say his first name, Peter. We talk often back and forth, and
Mm-hmm.
he's become a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been nice to be able to walk through some of that journey with him and to help him, you
Mm-hmm.
know, meet his needs as to what he needs to do for his circumstance.
Yeah, and I
But
love that because there's so many women that watch my videos, but what I'm finding is that there's a lot of men too. So having your perspective, I think is really, really good. And so I think that's why, some of them really like to reach out to you because you do have a
and
good perspective.
and men don't like to ask for help. So if they can see somebody else already doing it, they're like, okay, listen,
Right.
what? Tell me that again.
Exactly, exactly.
So
And I don't think men have the market cornered on that. I think sometimes women have a hard time asking for help too. But I think that
that might
that's
be.
the that's the overarching message that we have here is don't do this alone. Reach
No.
out, get with other people. And I think the other thing that I really like about our conversations and why we became instant friends, I think is because you've always had such a positive outlook on everything, even in the earliest days, not to say that it wasn't hard, but
Yeah.
it certainly was. But I think you were always looking to the future, looking to what was next, looking for healing. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah.
The first 2 years after Renee died were, I don't remember most of it. I really don't. Um, so I know that I've angered some people, but I really could not tell you what it was I said or did that caused that.
Mm.
But so if anybody's out there and if I've made you angry, sorry. So for the first 2 years, I didn't really couldn't really do anything, and then but I realized how lonely I was, and I started playing with the idea of maybe starting to date just to see how it would go, and then that did both good and bad things, for
And
me.
so was this
So
after the 2 years?
yeah, this was about year three.
Okay.
Year 3, I went out on my first date, and the thing that was hard for me is that I felt like I was cheating. I
Yeah.
was cheating on Renee
Mm.
because in my heart, Renee is still my wife. In my brain, I know she's no longer here. But my mom gave me a really great piece of advice, and she told me, she goes, son, what did your vows say? Your vows said, until death do you part.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, she's gone. But you've held your commitment for almost 30 years.
Right.
You've held your commitment. You've kept your word. You've done everything you said you'd do, and for that 30 years. But that contract is no longer valid. You have a right to be happy. It's not
Yes.
going to mean you're not going to miss Renee, or that you're going to replace her, or something like that. It's nothing like that at all. But me being with Nora now, it's just an addition to
Mm.
that, and it's a very happy addition.
Right.
So, but I think if my mom really hadn't told me that, I had to wrap my brain around that.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's so important in the grief process is how we look at things and how we need to be open to allow our mindset to shift a little bit and to look
Right.
at things slightly a different way. Because if we don't, we're unable to shift that perspective, it would have prevented you from dating at all, from, finding, a new level of happiness that you're at now, which I know
Right.
is even far superior to what it was, 2 years ago when we talked.
Night and day.
Yeah.
Night and day.
I mean, I can tell, I can see it in you for sure.
Thank
So for those who didn't watch the video, can you just give us a real quick background on sort of what happened with Renee? And then I want to move on into, how do you even get to the point to start dating? And what is that like that first date? That must be so
you.
nuts.
Awkward. Awkward. Uh, yeah. So Renee and I were married June 25th, 1988. And so we were together, married 29 years and together 30 or 31. And she and her sister both had really bad asthma. Her sister had an asthma attack long before Renee did, which took her life. And so after that, I paid very close attention to what was happening with Renee.
Mm.
And I was an EMT. I worked for the ambulance. I was a former firefighter. So I had the experience, and I knew if something could happen, I could help her while help was coming.
Mm.
So, but one day she had been sick, just with the flu. And of course, everything kind of settled in her lungs. And so she reached up and grabbed my hand and says, "Greggy, I can't breathe."
Mm.
And I said, Nay, I'm just going to call an ambulance. I want to get you to the hospital. You've been doing this far too much now. We've got to get you to the hospital. And she said, okay. And when she said, okay, I knew then, this is big, because she never wanted to go to the hospital.
Okay.
So I called 911, and as I was calling 911, she passed, and I could see her eyes dilate. And so I told people at 911, I said, I'm a former trained EMT. I'm going to start CPR. You guys need to get somebody here now. So I lifted my wife out of a chair, laid her on the ground, and immediately started CPR. I did CPR. Well, it seemed like an eternity, but I think it was like 15 minutes before somebody got there. It is a long time. It is a long time. And it's very taxing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very physical. But I could never get a breath of air into her. No matter how I tried, no matter how I positioned her neck, no matter what I did, I just, if I had had an airway, maybe I could have done something, but I didn't have any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I did get her heartbeat back. And all the time I'm telling her, come on, baby, let's stay with me, stay with me. And praying, God, please don't take her. Mm-hmm. But ambulance came, fire department came, they started their things. They started putting the IVs and stuff in her, and rushed her off to the hospital. And we went to the hospital, and I talked to the doctor, and he said, well, your wife's been down now for over 45 minutes without oxygen. Mm. And the chances of her coming back, are slim. And I said, yeah, I know. So I said, he goes, what do you want to do? I said, well, put her on support for right now. Let's see what the next day and a half, next 2 days bring. And then if at the end of that 2 days, there's no hope, then he goes, okay. He says, but keep in mind that putting her on life support is not going to save her life. It's only going to prolong her life. Mm. And I said, yeah, I realize that, but I made a promise that I would at least try. And then if it couldn't happen, then I'll keep the other end of that promise.
Right.
And so the next morning, the neurologist came in, and he told me, you may want to leave the room while I do these tests. And I was like, no, I haven't left her side. I'm not going to leave her now.
I know.
So
I
I
don't know
sat
why
there and held,
doctors do that because I guess they
yeah.
want to give you the out. But yeah, I mean, I'm just like you. I would have never
Well, because
done that.
they're touching her on her eye and they're sticking ice water in her ear and trying to get some type of response and and doing the knuckles on the chest thing and there was no response at all. And so he looked at me and he goes, "Mr. Godsey, I'm sorry, um, but your wife is brain dead."
Mm,
And in my heart, I already knew that.
yeah.
But my cousin Jackie was had gotten there, and I just about collapsed. And she was holding me up and was saying, "It's okay, Greg. It's okay. We're here." But it was hard. It was hard.
I think that there's something important that we didn't bring up the last time we had this, and I wanted to make a point of making sure that people know because there's always so much guilt that so many people say, what if I had done this? What if I had done that? And you were trained, right? And had all of the skills. And there are some times when no matter what we do or what we had planned or not planned, or, they're just,
Yeah,
it's just, there's nothing
yeah.
we can do. And that's hard.
When it's time, it's time,
Yeah.
and and um, you can try to move heaven and earth for that person, but if
Mhm.
that's their time to go, then you know. Well, she had her asthma attack on January 25th of 2017,
2017.
and then on January 27th, I signed the paperwork. I gave everybody a day to kind of come to Orange County where we lived
Mhm.
to say goodbye,
Okay.
and people did. People came from far and wide,
Mhm.
to see her and say goodbye and be with me and help me for the next few days. And it was heartwarming, but it was also an honor
Mm.
because I got to hold my wife's hand. For 30 years, I held her hand and loved her and took care of her, and she did me the same. Um, but it was an honor for me to sit there and hold her hand as she left this world into the heavenly into heaven,
Yes.
and while she reached out to take God's hand. And that's kind of how I see it. It's like a transfer of hands. It's almost like in my head I see God's hand reaching down, Renee reaching up, and me just kind of letting go.
I love that.
And um, that's kind of how I pictured it.
Mhm.
And so it was an honor, heartbreaking
Yeah.
beyond belief, but an honor at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So this year I had the experience of doing that with my dad.
Yeah,
And so the way
I'm
you,
sorry.
and this is the thing that I love about you, Greg, is you always have just some of the best words to describe some of the things that so many of us, or have gone through or have experienced, slightly differently, but there's enough similarities for us to get it. You started your grief journey and you said you were
Yep,
in a fog for a couple of years, got
couple
that.
years.
And then you decided that you wanted to start dating. So how does that even happen?
My kids were sick of me.
Yeah, because, in your early 50s, right? If you're thinking like
Yeah,
you're never going to date again, you're never going to get married again, that's a long
it's
time.
a long time. It's a
Yeah,
long time. My son called me, and my daughter was living with me, um, and they said, Dad, it's okay. We support you in doing that, and so I did.
nice.
I started a relationship in Fresno that didn't pan out, but it was something that got me back to understanding who I was,
Right.
and I'll always be grateful for that part of it, you
Hmm.
know, because it helped me kind of get back on my feet again.
And do you feel like you needed your kids' permission, or was it just their coaxing that sort of let you say, okay, yeah, you're probably right at this point?
No, I think maybe a little bit of both,
Hmm.
because look, I don't want them to ever feel like I'm replacing their mother,
Right.
because I'm not. if Renee were still here, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right.
And we were very happily married and did everything for each other.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, so while I felt kind of, or my kids were saying, Dad, you just go, we support that. I don't want them, like I said, I don't want them to think that I'm replacing
Mm-hmm.
Nay with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to move forward, not move on. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Move forward with now Nora, and to the point where, we're getting married. I am beyond the moon, thrilled and happy and excited and all those wonderful things. It's really amazing.
Well,
But I had to give myself that chance to do that. And if I had said no, then I'd still be someplace in a little dark room with, and that's detrimental.
yes. And that is
Mentally
the
and physically.
alternative. And some people choose that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not anybody that watches our stuff, because that's not who we are. But, you talk about moving on, or I'm sorry, moving forward, not moving on. But the other thing that you've also brought up is that you are who you are today, not only because of everything that you've gone through, but because of the relationship that you had with Renee.
My mom raised 3 boys by herself, and each one of us are different. That you would be amazed that we were all raised in the same household, but all 3 of us are different. But Mom taught us how to treat a woman. And when I married Renee, she taught me how to love a woman. And so based on what Renee did and told me and helped me with, and what my mom told me and helped me with, and the respect and the honor and being the gentleman and opening the doors, closing the doors and stuff like that, it's lasted a lifetime. But all those experiences together have made me the man I am right now. And had any one of those things been different, I wouldn't be.
Right.
And I like who I am. It's taken time for me to get there, but I like who I am now. And I don't feel, and I don't feel in any way that by Nora and I getting married that it's a slap to Renee,
right,
or to my mom. My mom died last year. So it's not a slap to them. It's really because of them that Nora loves me for who I am.
Right.
And Nora gets that. Nora totally gets that. And in fact, when she's mad at me, she'll look up and go, Renee.
I love that so much.
Get him.
I love that so much.
But we talk about her and everything. And at our wedding, there's going to be 3 chairs with roses on them. One for her mom, Aurora, who passed away, one for Renee, and one for my mom.
Oh my gosh.
And
love that.
So we're going to honor them by those chairs being there with the roses on it, front and center. And that's because that's where they are. And then my uncle and my aunt are going to be there as my parents, and Nora's brother and his wife will be there for her side. It is. We both felt like we wanted to do something to honor them, so that people could see that, look, we're not replacing people. We're just moving forward. And this is the person who I've chosen to move forward with.
Yes.
And that's really what it is.
That's such good advice. I tell you what, I know that people are going to comment on that. I know that's going to be big, because I think it's a great idea. And I think it's a good way to carry everything forward and to honor the people that we've lost. And honestly, you can do that for any event, whether it be a wedding or something else.
Absolutely.
Setting a place at the table.
Every October 19th was Renee's birthday, so I do flowers. And her daughter, Aranza, was born on October 19th. So I celebrate that with Aranza and my little brother, who was also born on October 19th. Okay. So we have 3 people now that we do, things for. But And every June 25th, I buy flowers and put them on the table just to honor Renee. Um, and in fact, this last June, Nora told me, don't forget to go get flowers for Renee. It's just amazing. It really is. It's, and I
Yes.
didn't have that before, so that's, to have that is
Right.
fantastic.
Exactly. I know people want to know. So back up. How did you, you started dating, and then how did you find Nora? Like, what's the dating process? Like, what do you even do for somebody who's like, okay, I'm maybe considering this. Like, I don't even know where to start.
Let me tell you something. The old gray mare of dating ain't what she used to be.
Right?
It is weird. It is awkward. It is, it's like being 13 all over again.
Oh,
For me, I went on Facebook and they've got a dating spot on Facebook called Facebook Dating.
uh-huh.
And now Nora will tell you that I'm not telling the truth here, but I'm telling you, this is how it all started.
Do we need to get her to
She said, tú es muy guapo. And I didn't know what it meant. So I had to look it up, which means you're very handsome. So I'm like, cool. Okay. Thank you. I think you're pretty too. And then she wrote back, then I wrote back, blah, blah, blah. And here we are, but it was.
You made that sound very easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it took time, but because she lives here in Mexico and I live in the U.S. But fortunately, I live on the border where she lives, so I'm just 20 miles from here.
Right.
But now I'm actually going to move here until we get everything sorted out with how we're going to do things, and then from there we may move back to the U.S. We may not, and we're looking at houses in Rosarito. So
very nice.
We'll probably end up there at some point.
So what advice would you give to anybody who's like thinking about dating and trying to figure it out? I can
tell you that it's weird because people will send you pictures you don't ask for when you're doing a dating site or whatever. And you have to kind of know that those people are scams and they're just trying to, so you have to really be careful with that. Nora was just, she works at a school, at a high school here. And
how do you know what you're looking for? Right. Because
you have your values, and look, if your value is to, to run right out and go to bed with somebody, then that's your value, and you'll find people who have those same values.
Right.
As your values become different, it's maybe harder to find those people, right. So I look for somebody with same values, but I did that also by asking questions and by trying to figure out who this woman was, and is she who she says she is, or is this somebody trying to scam of some type. And I ruled out the scam stuff, because we dated for, I don't know, like 4 months before I met her kids or her family.
Okay.
And which I respect, because she didn't want to introduce somebody that wasn't going to be there. If you think it's a scam, you need to get out.
Okay.
That's and it may not be, but if you just have to do your own soul searching and ask a million questions about who that person is, what are they saying to you, what are they trying to get you to do or not do, and is that something you want to be part of?
Would you say that that's sort of the hardest part of this whole process?
Well, there, like I said earlier, there's the part about feeling guilty. So you still got to wrap your head around that. But it is difficult to find somebody who's not going to go run and run to a hotel the first time. Hi, my name's Greg. Okay, let's go.
Right.
And and because that's easy to find. You can find that anywhere.
Right.
But to find somebody who's not like that and who really have values that you share, but at the same time, the harder it is to find that person, when you do find that person, it's
Mm-hmm.
also very special.
Right.
So that's the part. Like with Nora, we have we're on the same page with everything. It's a miracle in itself. It makes things a lot easier for us to be able to communicate and to do the things we need to do.
Now you had mentioned to me when we were prepping, right, that the intimacy part can be really challenging.
I mean, look, when you decide it's time to have sex and being intimate and doing that, you do feel well. I felt like again that I was cheating on Renee,
Mm.
and that part was very difficult because um, I never wanted to be, I never wanted to feel like that, and yet I did, and yet I know. So my heart is telling me, you're still married, but my brain is telling me, yeah, but you're really not, and look where we are,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So it's a battle between your heart and brain as to what it is. But if for me, my advice for that is if you've committed to your marriage and or to whatever relationship and it's done. I mean, because that person's passed, um, it's okay to move forward.
Mm.
It's okay. They would want you to,
Mhm.
and that was a conversation that Renee and I had years ago. Was look, if something happened, you know, I want you to be happy. I
Okay.
want you to live your life. I want you to not worry about getting married again. I'm not going to be there. I know you loved me while I was there, but after that, that's what I'm going to take with me to wherever, to heaven or whatever.
Mm.
You've got to just understand that and give yourself permission
Right.
to do that, to make that decision.
Mhm.
And you've honored those vows, and you've done that, and you can move forward.
Right.
It's okay. But it did take me a little bit, and the first time I got home and I cried because I cried all the way home,
Mm.
and I was apologizing to Renee. Renee, I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry.
Right.
And that's when I talked to my mom, and my mom said, "No, Greg, you fulfilled your vows. It's
Right.
okay.
Right.
It's
Well,
okay."
and again, and I think that there is a difference between your head and your heart,
Yeah, yeah,
and what that's about. So yeah,
yeah.
so it takes a minute. So, and I would think, I mean, and
Yeah.
again, I don't know firsthand, but I would think that there are lots of other people who would feel the same way, right? And have the same sort of
And
challenge.
I think that's normal. I think that's normal. You're
Well, and I
not
know
gonna.
we'll know. So if that's you, comment below so that we
Yeah, yeah.
know
Let
whether
us
or
know.
not
We'll
it's
talk.
normal, which we think it is. We think it is.
Yeah, I totally think it is. I think it's just another part of the grieving process and how to maybe get out of it
Right.
so much.
And you've shared before, about our lives being chapters in a book.
Yep,
And this is another one of those chapters, right?
absolutely. In our previous video, I told you about the chapter book philosophy that I have. That our life is a chapter, and every year is his own chapter.
Mm,
So Renee died at chapter 53.
mm.
And um, but there's a chapter 54. You don't forget what's happened in the previous chapters. You build on that. You
Mm.
build on that. You take the experiences, you take the conversations, you take the arguments, you take the love, you take everything from that, and you build on it to the next chapter.
Okay, so
And
it's all part
that's
of
what
the
we do.
same book.
It's
So
all
it's
the
not
same
like you're
book.
pulling out one chapter and reading that one. It's it's
Exactly.
it's additive. I like how you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's your next chapter in your book is going to be you dating or you doing whatever it is you do to get back on your feet, but that doesn't mean the previous chapters don't exist. They are there. They will always be there. Those stories have been written and are done, and they're in your heart and mind, and you whether you know it or not, you pull things from those experiences to make you, be the person you are now. You
Right.
are who you are now because of the things that have happened to you in your life.
And
So
was it Steve Jobs who said, you can always connect the dots looking backwards, right?
yeah,
But you can't see what's going to happen in the future. Like, could you have ever imagined, right?
no.
Back in 2017 or 2018 or 2019,
Or
for the fact
anytime that I would be moving to Mexico,
that you would be
no.
moving to Mexico and getting married.
Yeah, no,
Hmm.
no.
Hmm.
Look, in order to move forward, if you're driving a car, you don't look in the rearview mirror to go forward.
Yeah.
You've got to look forward in order to not hit things.
Right.
And it's the same thing with our lives. We've got to look forward. We can look in the rearview mirror to see what's behind us and remember those things or whatever, but you've got to look out the front window to navigate where you are and where you need to go.
I talk to people every day who tell me they're stuck, they've lost a spouse, they're they're in deep despair, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
I know you know, and they just don't see like that things are going to be getting better, that the clouds will eventually start to lift and that you will figure it out. And so what I tell people day after day after day is like have hope and
Cool.
keep going. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, that's such an important message, but it's so hard when you're in it.
It's like I've said about the whitewater rapids of emotions in that, your life is a raft, and it was you and your partner, you and your husband, you and your wife, whoever, and now that partner is gone and you're left to navigate this life alone with an oar, and you use that oar to navigate away from the big rocks and boulders that are the grief in your life. But sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you still hit those walls head on. And there are days like the oars, your family and friends helping you to help navigate through some of the despair and pull you out of it, or maybe take you out to dinner and make you laugh and do all those things.
Mhm.
Those are the people who are the oars in your life,
Mhm.
and they try to help you navigate through there. And then, but you're gonna hit a wall. I mean, it's inevitable. That's why you wear a helmet, and that's why you wear a safety vest, a
Yeah.
floating vest, so
Mhm.
that if you're thrown out in the water, you float.
Right.
But that helmet and your safety vest are those people that are the closest to you, who are going to be there, when the emergencies happen and when you feel at your lowest, and they're
Right.
going to be the ones to pull you out.
I think what we all do, right, is try to find ways to describe what we feel to be able to communicate it to other people because it's different. You can feel it in here,
Yeah,
right? But, I mean, and that's a challenge that I have that I work every day to try to do is how do you articulate this? How do I articulate for other people who might be watching who don't
right.
necessarily have the voice, right? To take what they've told me and articulate what that experience is like for them, to help them get through it. I want to ask you a question to kind of
Okay.
wrap things up, because I know that every time you talk, you're so inspirational. But what I want to do, and I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but what I want you to do is to think of yourself back in 2017, 2018, after you've lost Renee and you're early in, right? And now here you are, these years later. What would you tell yourself then if you could? If you wanted to know, what would you have told your earlier self?
You always hear the saying, "It's darkest before the dawn,"
Mm.
and um, you understand that.
Mhm.
You understand that, and you expect that. But life comes with these storms. But the storms don't stay. The storms move on,
Mm.
and you have to fight through those storms. Sometimes we're all going to get rained on and wet and whatever. That's the sorrow of the price of love is the grief of sorrow after they're gone. That's kind of the price you pay for it. But you don't, you would never exchange it for that, because you having the love of that person. But the Bible says joy comes in the morning, and you have to look forward to that morning. It's not going to be day 1. It's not going to be day 33. It may not be till day 4,000, whatever it is for you. I mean, because grief has its own time period for each individual's. And I hear a lot of times people say, well, people tell me I should stop grieving now. Well, they shouldn't be telling you that, number one. Right. And number two, you're the only one who can decide when you're ready to take the next step. Right. And so, but for me, I would go back and tell myself just to hold on, that joy comes in the morning. It's going to happen. There is no doubt it's going to happen. But I have to be patient. I have to be steadfast in what I believe, both, spiritually and what I've been raised to believe. I come from a house full of ministers. So, so we've been told, my grandfather, who was a minister for 72 years when he died at 93, would tell me, son, God's got a plan for your life. And so you just got to understand that God's got a plan for your life. And I would look at him sometimes and I said, yeah, but Grandpa, I really think God's up in heaven scratching his head going, I had those plans for Greg here somewhere. Where are they?
Well, and sometimes it's hard, right? So one thing to note is that that's different coming from your family member, minister, but a lot of people will tell us that early on, right? As a means to comfort us and say, well, God has a plan. And like, well, I don't really care about God's plan right now.
Yeah, you don't. And I was mad at God for a long time. I was like, you allowed me to save, a ton of people out of cars that were on fire or out of a house or whatever. I delivered a baby. I've done all this stuff, and I've been able to do those wonderful things.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it from one person that meant the world to me.
Right.
I felt so guilty. I felt like I failed Renee. And I know now that I didn't. There was nothing I could have done. You learn to finally accept that. I don't know. Sometimes, when people say those things about it's time for you to move on, that's because they've never lost somebody that close. But I have to believe it, and I have to take the necessary steps for myself.
Jan, in the last video that we did, when she had lost her husband and we were talking about her experience, and one of the things that she really had to come to terms with was like, no one's coming to save you. Like, no one is going to fix everything and make it okay. That's so much of you and your life and you being okay. Not to say that you can't have support. I encourage lots of support, right? That's why I'm here. But a lot of it, like, you have to, you got to be willing to do the heavy lifting yourself.
And she's right. She's absolutely right. If I choose to stay in a dark room in a dark corner and think horrible thoughts, which I did, I thought the most unbelievable thoughts.
We all go there.
And to realize, I wanted to join my wife, and I had to realize that that's not a fix. That's another tragedy. And I couldn't leave my kids like that. And so I really had to fight my way out of that dark hole. And once I did, then I was able to see who I was and relearn who I was in my new reality without Renee, and build on that and become a better person.
I think that we all, no matter who we've lost, if it's someone really close to us, right? For me, it was my son. For you, it was your wife. But I think we all have that moment. We all have the thoughts that people say, are you okay? And the thoughts that maybe you think in your head that you don't share with anyone else. That's why I tell people, in my groups, like, this is the place where you can say the things that you can't say anywhere else. Like, that is, I want to create that space. But you have to choose, right? There's a point where you say, okay, do I want to stay in that dark hole, like you were saying?
Yeah.
Or do I want something different?
So I just realized that I was afraid of the dark, and I had to get out of it. I had to get out of it, not because of my kids. partially because of them, but it really wasn't for them. It was for myself. That was a time that I had to be selfish for myself and to put me ahead of everybody else and try to deal with things. But I had family and friends. I had friends in Australia. So when I was having problems at 3 o'clock in the morning here, I could call them in Australia, and it's like 11 o'clock in the morning there. So I'm like, hey, guys. And John and Heidi, were, John talked to me about the man's perspective of things, and Heidi was really there just to kind of let me vent and to question, and they've both been with me this whole journey in dating, and what's going on, how are you doing, and that kind of stuff. So it's good to have people you can trust and that you love that can encourage you and help you through those times. If I choose to not allow that, that's on me.
We have a lot more control than we think we do, right?
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, you're stronger than you think you are. You're much stronger than you think you are. You think this is gonna be the end of everything for you. And in some ways it might be. In some ways it might be, but in other ways, no.
You said it's a fight, and you have to fight for your life, for yourself, for the people in your life, because by making yourself better and being selfish, right, to heal yourself, that really, that then sort of, gets on other people, right? And it gets good for them as well. Well, is there anything that you want to share finally before we close? I mean, you always leave us with, uplifting and positive messages. And I think that,
the other day on your posting, there was something about whether or not we're worthy. Why do we not feel worthy?
Yeah.
And I took a stab at it, and I think it was Jan who posted something like that, because I responded back to her. What I said was, we feel unworthy because we know the thoughts in our head. We know what we've done that nobody knows.
Yeah.
That nobody in the world knows. We know it though. And so because of those things, we can make ourselves feel like we're not worthy of something because of something we thought or something we did or whatever. My thing is to tell people that they are worthy. You're worthy of love. You're worthy to, yes, your spouse is gone, or yes, your loved one is gone. But you know what? They don't want you to be stuck in this hole. They want you to get out. They want you to live your life because they loved you for who you were to them. They want you to be that same person to somebody else. Not to replace what's been lost, but as an addition to what's been lost. So you build on it and you move forward. And it's entirely possible, but you have to want to do it. And so for me, my thoughts would be just hang in there. You've got a community of friends through Catherine, through myself, through everybody on the websites or the conversation chat. You have people that are there pretty much throughout all time. Somebody's going to be there usually, and somebody's going to respond. And what you say might help them, and what they say might help you. So you're helping each other, but just hang on. Just hang on. I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't build on what my mom gave me as a foundation, what my wife taught me about how to love a woman, and who I am as a man in my faith. And all those things brought together has brought me to this beautiful woman who I'm madly in love with and cannot wait to walk down the aisle with her and to show her and to spend the rest of my life with her. It's not that I'm moving on from Renee, I'm moving forward. And that's okay. That's exactly what we should be doing, moving forward. So my advice to you is if you're stuck, listen to me. If you're stuck, just hang on. Take the next step. Make it so that you can see the daylight. It may be far down at the end of the tunnel. That's okay. But you need to get to the point where you can see that for yourself so that you can see where you're going to go next. There's people here who will help you and will talk to you. You can bounce ideas off of. You can do all of that. But it's up to you to take those steps to do that. And I know because I did it. And believe me, I'm not the brightest bulb in the box or the sharpest knife in the drawer. But I know if I can do it, I know that you can do it too. You just got to put your mind to it. You're worthy. We love you. We want you to be successful. And so does your family who's gone on. They want you to succeed. They want you to move forward. But you've got to see that, recognize it. And by moving forward, you're paying honor to them. Move forward. You got this. You got this. Call Catherine, text us, whatever. I respond to them too. So if you want to talk to us, talk to us. We're happy to be there for you and happy to help. Just take that step because you are worthy.
Thank you so much, Greg. I mean, and it really is. I mean, the thing that's overwhelming to me is this community. And I'm so honored to have met so many people. And so that's why I love to have you jump into my Facebook group too, so that I can talk to you there. I can talk a little bit here in the comments section. But I really that's why I encourage everyone to email me. And I'll leave my email at the end here as well if you want to do that. And if you want to get in touch with Greg, we'll make sure that we can do that too. And he knows that you're asking for sure. But thank you for helping to strengthen this community, to help so many people who may be stuck, right? Or maybe are, not quite as far along, and need that a little bit. They need to see that light. And today you were that light for them. And who knows, you may have inspired a whole bunch of people to start getting into online dating because yes, it works.
I'm happy to come back anytime you need me, Catherine.
Oh, thank you
anytime
so much.
at all. So, I told Nora that sometimes we look for a reason for why somebody's moved on, why somebody's died. And my thought in this whole thing is that Renee's death has to mean something. And by me coming and helping and talking to other people and seeing that that's because of Renee.
Say that you're grief inspired.
Absolutely, because I then can inspire somebody else, but I wouldn't be doing that had it not been for the grief of losing Renee.
And
so no, that's again, right. You build on that. You build on that.
And that's exactly the messaging that I'm still working to articulate, right? That's what grief inspired is yes, you have the grief and you go through it and you do all the work and you become inspired. And when you get inspired to live your own life and to find your own happy, what happens is that trickles down and then you find ways to then share that with somebody else and pay it forward, so to speak. And to me, that's what being grief inspired really is.
So for me to talk to the men and women that I've spoken to through this channel and through your videos and stuff, that's inspired me. Iron sharpens iron. So what you've done has helped me tremendously. What everybody else has talked to me about has given me hope for other people. Together we'll get through it.
Exactly. And I think that's a perfect way to end this. Together we will get through it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me back. And I do love doing this. And I've told you I've always wanted to become a motivational speaker. So
yes, well, I think you just have. You've motivated us for sure.
I hope so. I hope so. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to do this and for watching these videos. And thank you, Catherine, for being the hub of it all. You've been a blessing to so many people. So thank you for that.